It's my favourite time of the day. Of course it is. It's time for Talking Pints. I love this part of the show, and I'm very pleased that Dr Jan Halper-Hayes has joined me. Welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Well, we've met before, of course, as I've popped across the pond once or twice. So just to sort of go into, before we talk about Republican politics and your passion for all of this and Republicans abroad and all of those things. So you are trained, you are qualified as a behavioural psychologist.
Yes, yeah.
And
political. I specialized originally in organizational and leadership. And then and I've always been involved in politics, but when I helped set up Republicans overseas in 2014, I became even more fascinated, but also very concerned. And so I went back to school. In 2017, I went to Stanford to their summer institute for political psychology so I could get certified as a political psychologist and really understand those dynamics that much more. And it has helped quite a bit.
Now, way before you got very involved in politics. You, of course, have had a successful business career. You come from a family of sort of serial entrepreneurs and, I guess, capitalists in a genuine sense of the term, as opposed to global corporatists.
Oh, absolutely. Earn your keep, work hard, be innovative, create something. In other words, when I get up every day, and even if I went back to work now, the first thing is, would I be making a difference? And that's always what our parents said. Are we making a difference? Whether it was when my parents had a shop in Port Sacal, which was a big tourist area in San Pedro outside of Los Angeles. It was always, how are we going to make a difference for other people? And I spent probably the past 8 years really giving back. And it has been so fulfilling. People go, oh, you're not getting paid for this? No, I'm actually paying for the privilege.
But you did get paid along the way, and you've run a very successful business. And from what I can understand of what you were doing, you were working with big companies, successful companies, chief executives, and trying to get them to organise themselves and function better.
Right. Yeah. For example, I led the merger and acquisition for Taylor Nelson Sofres, TNS, which was a big company here. And they were in 90 different countries. And so for 7 months, I hit almost all of their offices. But we ended up picking the best of the 400 leaders. And then I went around working with them as teams to figure out how they were going to implement the strategic rationale. Because there's one thing about the reason for the deal, and there's another thing about, is this going to work?
And working in those days predominantly with men.
Yes.
Men chairmen, men CEOs, and you've got some interesting observations on all of this that you've put into a book. Please tell us about it.
Well, Quiet Desperation, the truth about successful men.
So what have you learned about successful men?
Well, here's the thing, that what prompted me to write it, which I wrote it a number of years ago, was that there was someone named John Malloy who wrote Dress for Success for Women, which was basically telling them to be just like men. And all of the books at that time were coming out to tell women, be like men. But the men were telling me, there's something wrong here. I'm not hanging around for this gold watch because I don't get the gold watch anymore. Or, I have to work for a boss, and the minute they take him out and they put a new boss in, suddenly work life is so much better. And so I really was concerned if I could make a difference, really, as a psychologist. It was in my early years. And so I asked first I asked 56 men if they wanted free counseling for a year. 42 said yes. 10 months into it, we decided we had to go another year. And
male bosses now need counseling, do they?
Well, I'm talking late 80s,
wow.
Early 90s.
I'm astonished.
Well, and the thing is that was when men were told, oh, you can't feel. So I was teaching a leadership course at Harvard and during the summer, so it was the executives that were there. And at the dinner in the evening, one of them got up because I was talking about the conflict between being rational, logical, and objective versus trusting your gut reaction. And so one of them got up and paged one of the other men who had been giving me a hard time during the day. And he said, "Hey, Jack Durliat, your internist has called. You don't have indigestion." It was a gut reaction to what Halper was saying. And see, for me, which I am so bothered by this masculine toxicity. I mean, it's just one more way they're trying to make any group of any human being awful.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think for a lot of men in business now, they're terrified of what they can say or what they can do, and of course, quotas are coming in very, very rapidly, and I worry that we sort of throw out of the window the idea of choosing the best person because we have quotas and targets.
Well, there's that, but the other thing is that by making people so afraid, you completely destroy any chance for innovation. But the other aspect of it, this whole Me Too thing component, is that it has made women victims. I mean, Frank Langella, his young co-star, and she went and tattled on him because he maybe put his hand in a scene on her knee or something. And when you think about that, if these young women really want independence and to stand on their own 2 feet, they don't play victim. They don't play baby. And more importantly is they don't go out to ruin someone else, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, clearly some men have behaved terribly, but the point you're making is that actually telling women they're victims is bad and negative. And I have to say, I think that applies to ethnic minorities and others. Tell people they're victims and they're probably going to underachieve in life, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it is. Now, you've been very successful and, American TV for years and all these different things you've done. But this burning passion for politics was always going to come to the fore.
It was.
I guess the point of Republicans overseas, and you were global vice president of it, basically it's to get to make sure Americans vote, yeah?
Well, that was one part of it, but when I initially got involved, there was a new law that was coming into effect in July 2014. It was called the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FATCA. And so all 9 million at that time overseas Americans were going to be affected by it. In fact, by the end of 2015, nearly 6,000 overseas Americans gave up their citizenship because of this foreboding tax situation.
So sort of double taxation in effect.
It was even worse than double taxation, and we were being penalized. A woman who made $30,000 a year, her tax bill went from a couple of $100s up to $2,500 just to fill out all the paperwork, and it became so onerous. And even if an American owned 10% of a business here, then it meant all the business partners who weren't American were going to be affected by this law as well. So that's how we first got involved in it. And we raised over $1 million and we took it to the Supreme Court.
I remember.
Yeah.
No, I remember. It was a big victory. Now, the Republican Party that you first got involved in became a Republican, I'm going to argue, became from Reagan's day, very much sort of moved towards the country club Republican, people who perhaps were not particularly conservative, pretty middle of the road. And then suddenly, into all of this in 2015, is the man from New York, the businessman, the really out there Donald Trump. I guess he must have been a hell of a shock to the Republican Party.
Oh, I would say that's a very good British understatement. Definitely. Not only a shock, and having been an outsider who also had been an outsider playing their game with them because he had the money to do it, but to be able to pull off what they couldn't pull off. For example, Paul Ryan, he said Trump didn't pay his dues, and Rand Paul had actually gone to Trump and said, that Paul Ryan is sabotaging a chance to change the Affordable Care Act. I mean, in other words, all that kind of stuff, all that resentment.
A lot of internecine warfare. I mean, I'm struck, Jen, I come to CPAC and I'm regularly back and forth, and I've got to know the President Trump pretty well. And I'm struck that you've now got a Republican Party I mean, there are lots of Ron DeSantis fans, of course.
Right.
But even the Ron DeSantis fans still admire what Trump did as president. The problem is, and you're the psychologist, not me, so many people say, well, you know what, the Abraham Accords were great. The reducing corporation tax for American companies, massively out of date. Did a lot of good things in America. But it's his behaviour, it's his language, it's the aggressive appearance of Trump sometimes that puts people off. Now, it doesn't bother me tuppence. I'm perfectly happy with the way. But that's not the point. The point is you can have a base of 41% of Americans who love him, but you've got to get a few more than that to win the presidential election. And if he was to run again, and this debate goes on about his personality, his temperament, you tell me, is he fit to do this again? He's
absolutely fit. And there's a difference between a personality and temperament, which I was able, because that was a big discussion between Hillary saying that he didn't have the temperament.
Yeah.
And there is the presidential temperament tool that I actually asked Trump to take in 2015. And what came out of it, because we're born with our temperament. We don't develop our temperament. We develop our personality.
Right.
We develop our behavior based on cultural influences, norms, etc. But Trump's temperament is one of action. It's not, and it is no different than John F. Kennedy's, than Lyndon Johnson's, than Bill Clinton's, than Ronald Reagan. His results fell right in with that, because he's a problem solver. And even JFK, when people recounted how he handled the job, if it was something yesterday, he didn't want to know about it. And if it was something tomorrow, he didn't want to know about it. He was dealing with what the issues were today.
Action this day, Winston Churchill used to say when he was over the river here.
Yes, exactly. And that is Trump. And
his personality, it's New Yorker, it's quite loud, it's quite out there, and that won't change.
No, it won't. But Eleanor Roosevelt said that great minds think about ideas, average minds think about events, and simple minds focus on people. And I feel psychologically, I actually am very concerned. We call it Trump derangement syndrome, but I can't really understand how people get so worked up in hating him, because for that kind of you don't know him.
Well,
you
listen,
see his behavior.
I had plenty of hatred here because I dared to challenge the established status quo. So people feel uncomfortable when somebody challenges their worldview. And now we've got the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago and all the rest of it. Jan, I mean, you're quite a fan of his, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely.
And a friend of his.
Yes, absolutely. Look, people underestimate him. When he first came in and everyone was saying he's a fool, we're going to have our third world war, everything else. And he also said at the very beginning, I've got the goods on them all. And he keeps saying, I've got the goods on them all. And you and I know that is not a light thing, and we just have to be patient and wait to see what is going to happen.
Will I come to Washington, D.C. in the third week of January 2025 and stand there in the freezing cold and see his second inauguration?
Oh, yes. In fact, we'll also be at a party again in your honor the night before.
As we did last time.
Yes,
Jan, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Talking Pints and giving us a positive view about Donald Trump's temperament, because we don't get much of that in the rest of the media.
And trust him. Trust him. He's going to continue to do good things for the people beyond America.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.